Welcome to week 2. Now, I know after week 1 and some of the reading material and some of the stuff you've been presented, you might be feeling a little frustrated. But there is a method to my madness. What I'm trying to get you to do is to think like a scientist. In other words, I'm trying to get you to be objective. And what I mean by objective is where you step back from a situation, you kind of leave your lenses or your worldview goggles aside and try to simply look at things as they are. So when I'm asking you to write your critiques and I'm asking you to give an objective summary, what I mean is without bias, without prejudice, you're not using I feel or I think statements. And the same when I'm asking you to do your objective pros and cons. When you give an objective pro, you're simply looking at what was of value and worth in what you watched or you read. I don't care if it goes against your worldview or your belief systems or your personal preferences. You're simply saying what the strengths are, would be the pros, and then the same thing for the weaknesses. The cons of the article would be shortcomings. Not shortcomings as far as you're concerned personally, but shortcomings in the presentation, maybe the documentation, maybe the authority of which it was given. So that's what I'm looking for. And the reason I'm trying to get you to look at the subject this way is most people, when they come to these sort of hot button issues like creation, evolution, they're so caught up in their own way of thinking and their own worldview that they can't even hear what the other side is saying. So I'm trying to get you to take a breath, step back, and look at the issue from different points of view. Then with your critiques, the final part is your personal conclusion. And that's where you get to tell me what you actually believe personally, how you feel, how it's affecting you. You can field questions you may have for me. That is the place where you can be subjective or personal. So that's why I'm having you do this. I really want this class to help you develop your critical thinking skills. This week, what we're going to be looking at is man. And obviously the scientific creationist view is taking the biblical perspective that man was formed from the dust of the ground and made in God's image. And that's a really interesting thing to think about. It says that God formed man out of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. And so when we think about man being made in the image of God, it is only spoken to man in those sorts of terms. Even though God made all the plants, animals, and stuff according to the biblical account, only man is made in God's image. And woman, of course, was taken from man in the Genesis account. Very different from the Darwinian account, where, remember, one of Darwin's big ideas is this idea of common ancestry. In other words, all life comes from a single-celled organism. And all the different forms we have of plants and animals come from that one single-cell beginning. When we get to human evolution, part of what we're looking at is this idea of this tree of evolution that goes off into different branches. We have the plants, we have animals, we've got off the animals, we have mammals, birds, reptiles, fish, and off the mammal branch, we have what we would call the primates. And this is where evolutionists begin to look for a common ancestor between the great apes that are living today and modern humans. And they believe sometime, probably back close to, it could be as far back as 7 to 10 million years ago, they believe there was some common ancestor, and then these diverged into these two different paths. And so that's where we see a lot of study. When we talk about Australopithecines, for a long time were thought to be that link or that transition from the primates, or where they diverged to the primate branch and the hominid branch. And we're going to trace that through this week and look at the different fossils that have been found. And what I'm going to show you are real fossils. These aren't things that were just made up or constructed. They have found hundreds of these sorts of what they would call proto-human type skulls and fragments. And remember, it's very difficult to find fossils. It takes very rare conditions to form them and then for them to be preserved over long periods of time. Part of what we're dealing with, though, and we're going to deal with more next week, is or in weeks to come, is how do we date these fossils? What can they tell us about human lineage? And those are some of my prompt questions for the discussion board this week. What is a fossil? What can it tell us about the study of origins? And what can it tell us about these 2 points of view? Were we created in God's image? Did God create things as they are, and they've remain pretty much the same? Or did we come from a single-celled organism to evolve into the different diverse life forms we see in the world? So that's week 2's discussion, and I'll look forward to your comments, and we'll see what you come up with.